Hi guys, it's Kirsty. Today's video is about the need to feel in control that we may have when we're suffering from OCD and anxiety. But before I go into that, I'd like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with new videos as they're released. So I think this was an important topic to discuss in relation to OCD and anxiety, because both can make you feel extremely out of control, but both quite often relate to a fear of losing control or an intolerance of not feeling completely in control. So I wanted to look at the relationship of needing to be in control in relation to anxiety and OCD, look at how it actually fuels anxiety and OCD, and I wanted to also look at some of the irrational beliefs that surround the feeling or the idea of being in control, and how we can perhaps learn to be a bit more flexible with those beliefs in order to reduce our fear of not having full control, because having full control is a complete myth. It's an illusion, because we will never have full control, because we can't control what happens with the weather or what other people do. So we will never have 100% pure control. So I think it is a good topic for us to cover. So I think that with a lot of people, not just people who suffer from anxiety and OCD, but people generally, have a misconception about the level of control that they have over things. But particularly with anxiety and OCD, because of the internal experience that we're going through, because of kind of how unpleasant it is in many ways, physically and mentally, we think that we can do things to not only control our external environment, but also to control our internal experience, so the way we're thinking and feeling. And I think that it's this misunderstanding that people who have OCD and anxiety have, that can sometimes help fuel the cycle that keeps it going. It's this misunderstanding that we have this level of control over our internal experience, which we don't necessarily have, not all the time, and we can do things to change the way we're feeling to a degree, but not 100%. And it's this misunderstanding that I do believe adds fuel to the fire when it comes to OCD and anxiety. So firstly, I will talk about trying to control kind of external things. So somebody with harm OCD, sort of the fear of being responsible for causing harm accidentally, perhaps. So they might avoid driving, for example, so that they can't cause harm to somebody when they're in their car. Or they may avoid being around knives because they're afraid that they might lose control and stab someone because of a thought that they had. So, you know, these kind of avoidance behaviours to control situations, they will then do nothing more than fuel the obsessions more. But then these avoidance behaviours to prevent bad things happening kind of leads to the unpleasantness and the anxiety and the fear cycle going on internally. And so the avoidance kind of can then become trying to avoid certain things in order to not feel triggered, in order to not have the thoughts or urges that may then start to come about with these things. But of course, the more you do this, the more you avoid in order to control the way you feel, the less control you will have over the way you feel, because your mind will pick something else to focus on and to send obsessions around in order to get your attention. So if you continue to avoid that, the less control you will have anyway, and the smaller and smaller your world will become as a result. Another way that we are actually some of us might be misguided in terms of how much control we have over things is if you're somebody who is suffering from relationship OCD. So your fear may be losing your relationship. And so you may be having obsessions. Do I love my partner? Are we right together? And you may be trying desperately hard, clinging to keeping your relationship, trying to protect it by pushing away these thoughts, or, avoiding triggers, or trying to analyze to test that you do actually feel love, and, various things to control situations. You might avoid arguments in order to try to avoid any kind of tension in the relationship, so you don't have the feelings come up, and you can eliminate all risk of losing the relationship. But one thing that you certainly can't do is you can't control how your partner behaves, and you can't control how your partner feels. You can try and make your partner feel good as best you can. That's, obviously most of us would want to do that in a relationship anyway, but you can't control how your partner feels overall. You can't control if your partner meets somebody else that they find themselves more drawn to than you. Unfortunately, that is not in your control. I apologise if that's triggering, but that is a fact. It's not in your control. So you could be doing all these things and, trying to control the relationship and, making yourself suffer, putting yourself through all that. But actually, you can't control it. And another thing that you can't control is how other people outside of your relationship might behave as well. How we don't know, and this is a horrible thought, but, somebody might run your partner over, or anything could happen to any one of us, and that would end the relationship. So, we want to obviously protect the things that we care about, but it shouldn't be done in a way that makes you suffer. So, like, for example, in this example, you want to protect your relationship with your partner, but in the process of doing so and trying to over control to that degree, you're making yourself suffer. And actually, it's probably not very, it can't be easy for a partner of somebody who suffers from relationship OCD. So it's in your partner's best interest for you to push for recovery as well, and relinquish some of that control or your beliefs surrounding having that level of control, not just for you, but actually for the sake of your partner and the relationship. And the same applies for any parents, for example, who wants to desperately protect their child, and completely understandably they would. But somebody with OCD may go to very, very extreme lengths to eliminate any kind of risk. And unfortunately, there is no situation in life where all risk can be eliminated. But I think that is something that we can be misguided on. We have incorrect beliefs about that we can eliminate all risk. It's almost linked to the idea of uncertainty. It's like, if I control the situation enough, I can create that level of certainty that worst case scenario can't happen. So in this example, a parent might want to ensure that nothing bad happens to their child, so they do everything they can. They maybe try and keep the house safe. They check light switches, check plugs, check everything, check the food, no contamination, whatever it might be. But obviously, it's good for children to socialise. It's good for children to be able to go to school. And unfortunately, you can do this in the most safest way possible. But again, all risk is not eliminated. So it's kind of looking at, again, relinquishing. You are already relinquishing a degree of control anyway. And it's better for said child, or in the case of it might be a pet as well, that you're desperately trying to protect by over controlling circumstances to keep it safe. But actually, it's not in the best interest of your child, or, for example, your pet. Sorry, I'm not trying to compare children to pets. I just want to give examples that can be applied in many different circumstances. So in relation to the idea of, I must be in control at all times, when you relate that to the idea of uncertainty as well, there's certain things that we may also do where we are trying to get control over a situation, but in fact, we are making ourselves feel less in control of the situation. So another example of this is actually mental rumination and analysis as well. So, you know, I've given examples of some physical compulsions that we might be doing to make sure we're in control, particularly in regards to avoidance, but the mental rumination is a big part of it as well. So for example, if we're trying to work out if you're somebody who has feelings for the opposite sex or not. So basically, if you're having doubts about your gender preference, you know, whether you're straight, homosexual or bisexual or anything else, you might find yourself kind of doing a mental internal review, you know, picking apart the way you felt on certain times and you know, think of it like that, sort of going back and trying to remember things. It might be picturing being with people of a certain gender and seeing how you feel about it. It might be kind of sort of putting yourself in situations like testing yourself by looking at, you know, maybe you're looking at a video or something of a specific gender to test how you feel. So it's kind of the going over the review, and that's kind of trying to get to an answer about a situation. You know, you're trying to get to an answer of one way or another, or you're trying to just simply reassure yourself that your doubts are not true and things are as you always thought. So this is kind of, we're trying to get to an answer so that we feel more in control of a situation, so that, you know, I want to eliminate any risk that I'm wrong about what I think about myself. So I'm living my life in a certain way, and I want to know for definite that I'm doing the right thing and that I'm in control of the situation. So I'm going to do this. But of course, the more we do this mental review, we test feelings, you know, looking at how we react to certain things, going over mental analysis, recalling past situations and how we might have felt then. The more we kind of create an entanglement with the topic, and the more we'll give our OCD kind of ammunition to come up with more ideas and more answers. And you think you get to the answer, and then there's obviously the usual, but what about this? Have you considered this? So you're adding further entanglement into the situation, thus creating even less of a sense of control of the situation, creating even more uncertainty. So a big part of changing this need for control is learning that we don't have the level of control that we think we do. As I said, we can't control what other people do, think, feel, how they behave. And we can't control other events. So unfortunately, crap stuff happens in life and we can't always control that. Also, for the sake of ourselves and the sake of others, certain risks do need to be taken, because there is it's not living if small risks aren't taken. In terms of, when I say small risks, I mean simply leaving the house. There's, you know, risks that a meteorite might fall on you, or somebody might drive a car into you. Anything can happen. There's only so much that we can control, and especially at the expense of not only our lives, but other people's lives as well, when we try to over-control situations as well. And also, as I said, this kind of thinking that we can avoid certain situations or take actions in order to control what's going on internally, when in fact that fuels the internal things that we don't want. The pushing away encourages it to come back, so we end up feeling more out of control. So again, here it's kind of being aware that we can't, you know, that we're, by trying to over control and not allowing any flexibility or any risk of any uncertainty or anything like that, we are adding fuel to the fire. So looking at irrational beliefs kind of around, I must ensure this does not happen. I need to know that this won't happen. I must know the answer to this. It would be awful if this happened. It's changing these kind of beliefs around your feared scenario to be more flexible. I prefer if it doesn't happen. I strongly don't want this to happen, but in order for me to live, you know, a nice life, or ensure that my partner or my children, you know, get to have the same opportunities as other people, I must, you know, I'll practice understanding there's only so much control that I have. So looking at these beliefs in order to be more flexible, because if you think about it, being rigid and in control is the opposite to having flexibility, and that's kind of allowing to loosen some of the reins that we may have over our beliefs, which can help us to reduce some of our behaviours that we're doing to over control, whether it's, you know, external things or internal experiences. So I hope this video has been useful for you in terms of kind of looking at the ways that we might try and over control situations, and also the links between, you know, over controlling is a way of trying to eliminate uncertainty as well, and as we all know, as with control, certainty is an illusion as well. It's not, it doesn't exist. The only thing we can be certain of is that everyone will die at some point, unfortunately. And now I'm going to end the video, and it doesn't feel like a good time to end the video after saying that, but thank you very much for watching, and take care. Bye.